Dyna Jump, potentially Brawl Stars' most unique and difficult to master star power, requiring the user to put in a lot of effort to get the timing right. Content creator Ray is a great example of this, spending 240 days training with Dynamike, and even created a tutorial for it. Unfortunately, and many others progress in Dyna Jump have been destroyed because of one change to Dynamike himself. But let's talk about Dynamike's history first, and what caused this change to Dynamike. Dynamike was released before Brawl Stars' global launch, receiving a handful of buffs, as he was proven to be too weak. Keep in mind that Supercell are still regularly making balance changes, as they are still in beta testing. Dynamike later got some nerfs, which made him pretty balanced, and every brawler's health and damage statistics got multiplied by 4 to make balancing the game easier. At the same time, star powers were introduced into Brawl Stars, adding in Dyna Jump. This is what Kairos commented.
This is by far the most hilarious addition to the game, but
it is important to note that at March 7th, Brawl Stars had a very controversial update. Brawl Stars changed from portrait to landscape. The joystick button size had to change because of the screen size difference. Players had to get used to the new joystick buttons, particularly the ones that use tap to move, instead of joystick to move when Brawl Stars was still portrait. Even worse, back then you couldn't adjust the joystick sizes. So why am I telling you all this? Well, these changes have affected Dynamike,
but still, I think that he does need some type of improvement, particularly because the controls just don't favor him. I think that once the controls are optimized a little bit more for throwers, then I think that Dynamike will do much better.
Following the landscape change, Dynamike's projectile speed got buffed by 14%, another 12%, and 10%. This helped Dynamike land his shots easier, but they overhelped him, accidentally causing him to be very strong.
Now, Dynamike is a really strong brawler right now. He's considerably one of the strongest, probably right after Crow. That being said, he is a little bit more map dependent, and you gotta know how to play him well.
Dynamike later got a nerf to his projectile speed, but the nerf didn't affect him that much, so he got even more nerfs, and remained pretty balanced after that. Unfortunately, being such a map-dependent brawler make it inevitable that he would be bad in some metas, and as more brawlers got added, his competitive level just got lower and lower, mainly because there are better alternatives of Dynamike, such as Tick, which attacks cover a bigger radius than Dynamike, making it very easy to hit shots. Throwers are usually only used to gain control in certain maps, and when most other throwers can do a better job than Dynamike, it's hard to justify using him competitively, with the exception of Heist. In certain maps, this could be why Supercell decided to make Dynamike focus on damage instead of area control, buffing his damage multiple times, and even adding demolition, his second star power that adds an additional 1000 damage onto his super. At this point, Dynamike severely needed a defensive move. Dyna Jump wasn't a very practical option, and its skill cap was too high. Supercell definitely solved that problem by releasing this fidget spinner, considered to be one of, if not the worst gadget in Brawl Stars. In fact, it was so bad that you couldn't even move while using it. Fortunately, now you can move and even have a speed buff. This made that gadget slightly more useful.
I found such a great deep appreciation for this gadget as of recently, ever since it got a buff.
Well, this didn't last very long. Meet Satchel Charge, Dynamike's second gadget. Once activated, his next attack will stuck for 1.5 seconds. In other words, overpowered. The gadget itself was OP, but did it actually make Dynamike better? Well, yes and no. Not many brawlers can survive his super while stunned, so it does help him get more kills. The problem is, this doesn't solve his lack of defensive skills, leaving him vulnerable when going on offense. Fidget Spinner isn't really a defensive option, even after multiple buffs. Also, it's just a lot worse than the Satchel Charge that hasn't gotten any buffs before, although it does require skill to be used defensively. Dynamike slowly built a community of players that were focused on mastering Dynamike. His high skill cap attracted players that like to push Dynamikes and their own limits, but without lore. It's hard to truly feel connected with a character, so when his description got changed, it gave him more depth, a pretty small change in comparison to the upcoming balance change.
The time from when he throws his attack to when the dynamite explodes is decreasing by 10%. This means it is going to be much easier for Dynamite to actually hit his shots and deal damage with them. However, it's nearly impossible to double jump with just his attacks now, if it is possible at all.
This made the Dynamite community sad, but Supercell expected this, putting this in the update logs.
This is the important part. We understand this might upset some Dyna jumpers, but before doing what you do best on social media, please let us know if the buff worked for him. We can adjust the jump later.
Well, did this change help Dynamike? Well, yes. Steadily his win rate grew a little, but there was another factor helping Dynamike.
Indestructible walls are back.
Dynamike is moving from the F tier all the way up into the C tier, up into the A tier. Out of all the throwers, the new unbreakable walls have probably benefited Dynamike the most.
Dynamike maintained his win rate while increasing his use rate. The newly added masteries definitely increased it slightly, even though his title isn't that good. And Dyna jumps still need skill to use efficiently. In fact, it got even harder because of the limitations. Weirdly enough, his most played game mode is Brawl Ball, a game mode that needs both defense and offense. Personally, I don't think he requires any buffs or nerfs right now, even though he still lacks on defense. But what do you guys think? Did Supercell do a good job in balancing him?